A mysterious gas begins infecting individuals, transforming their deepest fears into triggers for intense anger. One family becomes entangled in this turmoil as the remorse of their past continues to dismantle their existence. Giacomo indulges in private moments in bed while observing a model on his phone. His father abruptly interrupts, causing Giacomo to hastily divert his attention to conceal his excitement. Aware of Giacomo's activities, his father reminds him of their pending task before departing. Throughout his preparations, Giacomo receives incessant messages from his father on his phone, urging him to hasten, which clearly aggravates him. Adding to his frustration, Giacomo struggles to pry open a manhole cover in the pouring rain. His father watches passively as Giacomo slips and falls before ultimately completing the task alone. Venturing into the sewer, Giacomo encounters a slimy substance on the floor before being overwhelmed by gas released from boiling sewage water, which leaves him gasping for air. Amidst his struggle, a woman resembling the model from his phone approaches him. Meanwhile, Thomas chauffeurs a mother and daughter to a hotel, maintaining a reserved demeanor as the girl complains about his tardiness. The following morning, Thomas observes his daughter Barbara, who is paralyzed from the waist down, attempting to exercise her legs before abandoning the effort. Over breakfast, Barbara shares a meal with her brother Enrico, while Thomas reads about Giacomo's incident in the newspaper. Their meal is interrupted by the sounds of a confrontation emanating from their neighbor's residence. Disregarding the commotion, Thomas responds to his alarm, signaling that he needs to accompany Barbara to school. He inquires about his son's plans for the day, but the man leaves without providing an answer. Meanwhile, Enrico attempts to steal liquor from a store, but is admonished by an old woman. Frustrated, he purchases the bottle legitimately, while muttering to himself. At the checkout, he spots his father with another woman, but avoids contact. Struggling with household chores to support his family, Thomas's son is struck by a basketball, leading to a confrontation with a group of men. Instead of returning the ball, he provokes them and records their reaction. He spends time with Martha, sharing the videos with her. Martha questions his father's stance, but Enrico dismisses any authority his father may have due to his past actions. Elsewhere, Thomas dozes off on the sofa while the news reports a violent murder. His alarm wakes him, but he hits snooze. The ongoing yelling from the neighbor's house prevents him from resting, prompting him to intervene. Knocking on their door, he inquires about the noise. The neighbor explains that his wife suffers from severe depression, but Thomas notices a wound on his head and enters to investigate. Shockingly, he witnesses the neighbor's wife stabbing the floor with ooze dripping from her face. Recoiling in horror, Thomas is ushered out by his neighbor. Meanwhile, Enrico prepares to shower at Martha's home when he notices gas emitting from the sink. Curious, he investigates and coughs after smelling it. Later, Thomas tucks Barbara into bed and notices a drawing on the foggy window with Enrico crossed out. He then visits Farini, who advises him to accept the extra payment despite Thomas' objection. Unaware of Enrico's rejection by Martha, Thomas resumes his job as a driver. A car abruptly cuts in front of him, revealing a sticker depicting a family similar to the drawing on Barbara's window. After dropping off his passenger, Thomas realizes his family's old car had the same sticker. Later, Thomas is informed of his suspension due to a complaint from the passenger about the incident. Despite his plea for understanding due to his responsibilities, his supervisor remains unmoved. With frustration boiling over at the loss of one of his jobs, Thomas watches his daughter sleep until his alarm disrupts the peaceful scene. Despite Barbara's cheerful greeting and mention of a pleasant dream, Thomas coldly moves her into her wheelchair and pushes her to the exercise bars, ignoring her request for breakfast. As Barbara struggles to pull herself up, Thomas spitefully removes the wheelchair, accusing her of becoming too comfortable with her condition. He vents his frustrations, muttering about how her condition drives him to madness, but snaps out of it when Barbara falls. Overwhelmed with guilt, he embraces her, tearfully apologizing. Barbara forgives her father but insists on having breakfast and reconciling with Enrico. During breakfast, Enrico's cheerful demeanor distracts Thomas, causing him to spill milk resentfully. Despite initial rejection, Enrico accepts the mug at Barbara's urging. She then requests Enrico's company on their way to school. Humoring his sister, Thomas drives Enrico and Barbara to school. The news on the radio reporting gruesome murders distresses Barbara, prompting her to ask Thomas to turn it off. Enrico takes the initiative to switch off the radio as Thomas remains lost in thought. Despite Barbara's insistence on taking Enrico to school, he opts to skip classes. He encounters his friend Gianlu, who expresses happiness at seeing him back, but Enrico explains that he was only there to appease his sister. Disappointed, Gianlu walks away, but Enrico suggests skipping class together. The two spend the day goofing off and trespassing into the abandoned swimming pool. Gianlu questions Enrico's motives for the explosion at the pool, but Enrico evades the topic. Their conversation escalates into a physical altercation when Gianlu refuses to follow Enrico's reckless behavior. Meanwhile, Thomas visits the store near the site of his accident, hoping to find footage of the incident. However, he discovers no evidence of a speeding car. The store employee mentions rumors of hallucinations caused by a gas from sewers during rain, sparking Thomas's curiosity. Thomas researches the rumored gas while accompanying Barbara to her physical therapy session. On their way home, they discover the homeless man near their building is dead. As Thomas investigates the scene, Alice comments on the brutality of the attack, suggesting that only an animal could inflict such cruelty. Returning home, Barbara screams at the sight of gas emanating from the tub and sinks. Thomas covers them and rushes to Farini's room, finding it empty except for black sludge. Suddenly, Farini's roommate emerges, covered in the same sludge, muttering about Farini's last words mentioning Thomas. Horrified, Thomas retreats. In the abandoned pool, Enrico and Gianlu plot to steal the security guard's gun, but end up with the radio instead. Enrico tries to distract the guard, who becomes horrified upon seeing Enrico covered in sludge. A startled Gianlu is shot by the guard, who then takes his own life. Enrico mourns his friend and calls his father for help, only to be met with rejection. Alone and feeling abandoned, Enrico contemplates the guard's gun as rain begins to fall. Back at home, Thomas closes a window and notices a woman observing him from a nearby building. Suddenly, her head is slammed against the window, triggering a car alarm that causes Thomas intense pain. Upon checking again, he finds the curtains drawn and realizes he missed calls from his son. Enrico sends a message declaring his freedom just as someone knocks on Thomas's door. Terrified, Thomas grabs a screwdriver and investigates, finding nobody outside but discovering ominous writing on the walls. He follows a trail of sludge inside, where he encounters a disturbing sight. Meanwhile, Enrico, unaware of Martha's demise, follows a voice to the bedroom and encounters an apparition of his deceased mother, Christina, beckoning him to join her. In their hallucinations, both Enrico and Thomas are initially comforted by sweet whispers before being labeled as failures. Enrico is told he's a failure due to his father's abandonment, while Thomas is blamed for his son breaking the family. The apparitions then instruct them on how to free themselves. Enrico grips his gun while Thomas holds onto his screwdriver, both experiencing black liquid flowing from their eyes as their hallucinations smile maniacally. Years earlier, Thomas, busy at work, serves pastries to Enrico and Gianlu before joining them in a video game. Christina arrives home tired and Thomas comforts her, discussing a job opportunity at her mother's restaurant. Christina heads to pick up Barbara from a party despite her headache, refusing Enrico's offer to take over. En route, Enrico's actions cause a car accident in the rain, leading to Christina's death and the emergence of the black sludge. In the present, Enrico enters a hallway filled with balloons, haunted by his guilt. Thomas stabs him from behind before grappling with him in their apartment. Barbara tries to intervene but finds her door locked. During the struggle, Thomas breaks Enrico's hand but is momentarily distracted by his phone, allowing Enrico to escape. Meanwhile, Barbara encounters the teenager who threatened her before, but Alice intervenes, allowing Barbara to escape. In the parking lot, Thomas confronts Enrico at gunpoint, but Barbara's intervention leads to a moment of reconciliation. As they apologize, a sludge-covered form of Christina approaches but dissolves when Thomas reaches out to her. Tears flow from their eyes, symbolizing the release of darkness, as the family walks out of the apartment amidst the chaos, embracing each other and treasuring their bond despite the hardships they faced. The movie concludes with them moving forward, focusing on what they still have rather than dwelling on what they've lost.